Old Scratch, Nick, the Prince of Darkness, Strummer of Sins, Morning Star, the Lightbringer. The devil goes by many nicknames, and in Afterparty, Night School's studio's game after Oxenfree, you can add the most wrecked party planner you've ever seen to that nickname list. In Afterparty, you play as two recently dirt-napped college kids trying to complete the one mission that a teenager may actually be able to beat the devil in, and that's drinking. A 2D narrative-driven adventure game that sees you in hell trying to get back to life before the night is up. Afterparty releases tomorrow for $19.99 on the PS4, Xbox, and PC, as well as on Gamepass for the Xbox and PC for whatever amount you ended up paying for the Game Pass. As always, if you like the video, hit the subscription button and choose the all for notifications. So here's my review for Afterparty, and graphics are going to be up first. The game certainly bears more than a passing impression of the Guerrilla's art style, and hell, where the characters spend most of their time is a colorful world of neon billboards and artful advertising for the dens of sin and questionable activities, with their own features enhanced to deliver the personality of the characters. It's a unique look, and it's farther along at times artistically than, say, Oxenfree in its more painterly style, but at the same time somehow feels a bit rougher around the edges. Now, this might be the interactions with the characters and the lack of information that's really delivered to you about the world except for the exact places in which you can go to. It just feels a little less seamless than Oxenfree does. Or like when the characters go to grab a drink from the bar and their arms flick out at odd angles to grab the drinks. It goes from looking good to really looking low rent and back and forth in the same scene. Now, you move around the game world, traveling to unique bars, drinking various otherworldly drinks, and exploring the game world. I should say, take exploring with a grain of salt here, though, because it is just walking from one end of a warped street to the other and reading the various entries that you get. Overall, the game looks good, but some could be easily turned off by the basic look of the characters' faces, which even at their most emotive never really look all that good. Animation-wise, the game's highlight is the mixture of the larger-than-life facial features and the animations of the two leads together. Each displays emotions from fear to drunken anger to intimidation very well, with Milo's shaking knees when he's confronted in a lie to Lola's shrugging off of one-liners during beer pong. For the budget, I would say it's not bad, but there is some hit and miss here. And that brings us to performance, and Afterparty is not going to push your system unless you have something like 4 generations back when it comes to hardware. It's only got a couple systems to adjust in the graphic settings, and you probably won't need to fiddle with those unless you really do have an old system, and on the console it runs fine. It's just not taxing at all, and that doesn't mean it can't look pretty, it's just not really that kind of game. While some may like it a lot, and others might be turned off a bit by this kind of art style. And that brings us to gameplay and a bit about the story. In Afterparty, you play as Milo and Lola, who recently let slip the mortal coil and for reasons you don't know were thrown into hell. Due to scheduling and really no one in hell giving a shit if you're late to anything, you're left to hang out in the various burgs of the demonic districts until morning, in which all your tortures will be outlined and your personal hell will begin. And right from the start, you're partnered up with a personal demon who's Wormhorn, a hilariously quirky and really strangely upbeat pinata of a demon whose only desire is to know your every secret and then spill them out of you, ruining your afterlife in accordance with her job as, well, a demon. But soon, you find out that there might be one way out of hell if you outdrink Satan. What follows is a few hours of walking and boating and being demon flown around locations as you try to learn what you can do and what you need to know about the contest, and hopefully outdrink Satan in a party to end all parties. The main game is very simple. You walk from one side of a level to the other and then talk with people in the various establishments that you can enter, and you try to put your plan together to take down Satan in the drinking contest, as well as performing various quests for some of the patrons, demons, and other sinners who inhabit the game world. The conversation is much like Oxenfree's, with you able to take 1 to 2 choices normally during discussion, as well as saying nothing, moving conversations along at a somewhat steady click. Now, when you go to the various bars in hell, you can sit down at the bar and choose from assorted alcohols, many of them unique to the bars for which they are, and adding another dialogue option to your upcoming choices in dialogue. For example, if your drink causes aggression, you might be able to intimidate a demon, or pick one that raises your perception and you might notice something in a line of dialogue you can unpack into useful data in that discussion. Surprisingly, though, Afterparty mires itself in some really short and blurby exposition that never really goes anywhere. Now, sure, they explain a bit about what's going on in some side story, but the game's desire to keep the twist secret, which everyone's probably going to guess less than an hour in unless they're not playing the game at all, you're going to run into a moment where you've had it in every damn movie or show where you're screaming at the screen just saying, why don't you say what you mean? And of course, you know you won't, because they need to add 45 minutes of longing looks and people walking out of doorways repeating what they said in slower words because it means more that way. Means more that way. As you make progress, occasionally Wormhorn is going to show up and discuss the choices you made. Here's where the game really fell down for me. The choices you make seem absolutely absent of even mattering. It's like you made this choice and you're like, yep, that's what I did. And they sort of sputter and say, boy, you're dumb. So I went back and I made the different choice, and boom, they said the same thing. Now, this is probably made worse by the choices really not being huge ones that you go over, despite the game trying its best to make you think that it is. Even sometimes stopping to say, man, you really need to think about this, but you actually never do. And while humor is at its very core subjective, here it is like baby's first F word. It's just blurbs of data met out like random musings of a computer on a timer, spitting out sentences written and then never checks if two sentences really make sense to one another. Also, conversations are nice, though not expertly written, but many times you're left with some long walks with nothing being said because the one or two sentences has been delivered already, and this isn't helped by the sound and music, which I'll get to in a moment. Where Oxenfree was a uniquely satisfying set of narratives about relationships and friends, defined while spread across the momentary tapestry of supernatural happenings and exploration across a painted world, Afterparty is almost solely a right-left-right of small discussions and then silence with a little world building sometimes in between, depending on if it's just you walking with others or if you're in the taxicab of some overly talky demon driver. Afterparty does have a couple mini games to try to break up the steady walkie and talkie gameplay, either drinking games like beer pong or basic match the button dance-offs against the demons. But since these are mostly done in very specific places, it feels really lean when it comes to gameplay. Where Oxenfree had an almost unusual consistency to the game's interactions during movement, from fiddling with radio stations to try to just figuring out little puzzles to just seeing something crazy, Afterparty does not actually have that much other than some patrons' discussions in bars or along the street, and those are in particular quite short. Also, the game has a number of other issues. When traveling, the game will randomly switch between the two main characters, resulting in walking across the screen during a discussion, then the game just switches to the other character. And you probably didn't notice that that character had stopped moving while you were walking, so that requires you to walk back towards the other character. Lastly, the autosave system is not great, with a couple long drawn-out sections between them, and I had two crashes, both resulting in trudges back through conversations and travel moments. Now remember, you can't skip through the dialogue either, so all that has to be watched again. Ignoring those two crashes, Afterparty is only about 4 hours, much of it traveling between locations and learning a bit more about the unique, real rules of the underworld and what's happened since the fall of the devil into hell. When it comes to gameplay, it does speak to me because I do like these narrative-based games, but this one in particular just seems very, very basic. And that brings us to sound, music, and voice.
And you are doing a book report on Linda Landon's autobiography, Does the Hyena Cry? The Linda Landon Parable. It didn't really fly off the shelves, if I remember. We need to get...
Now, for robbing all those liquor stores, Dev will be suspended from a pole by his genitals.
What?
While children use your head like a tetherball, weather permitting. Marcy, your tits will be consumed by snapping turtles, only for them to regrow larger every day, giving you intense back pain when you jog.
In this corner, we got a little-known angel of mercy we like to call Asmodeus.
Children, and those are the names you gave them?
I didn't pick their names.
But you did adopt them.
They're not mine. I'm just showing them around.
We're not kids, all right? I got a savings account and everything.
And on this one, let's discuss sound first. Most of the time you're traveling through locations with one or two samples of wind blowing or echoes from a tunnel, and that's it. Luckily, when you enter locations, there's far more sound, with bars and demonic meeting rooms having a more lively feeling to them. Sadly, since you spend a lot of your time not in those locations, it feels lean again. And that brings us to music. Music usually plays only when in those locations, though some travel has a bit, and it's a mix of generic background musical tracks. The Schoolyard Stranglers music is excellent, though, and probably the best, with a chanting demonic choir sound running along in the background. Overall, once again, we have a basic presentation that is almost frustrating. And that brings us to voice. So these are very well performed. First, the actors' portrayals, they're fine. Excellent even at times, with each actor offering subtle nuances from annoyance to drunk annoyance to full-out anger and regret, depending on the drinks you have. Very well done, with characters like Satan and Wormhorn and her infuriating happiness working really well to offset the more grounded delivery from Milo and Lola. That being said, the writing is hit and miss. Sometimes there's this back and forth with a speed that really drives the humor, but other times it's not at all smooth, with conversations really making no sense even when you get to the end of the game, and really falling off there at the end when it comes to the impact. Again, that's more based on the writing and not the delivery. Milo and Lola, for instance, are supposed to have a sort of amnesia when they arrive, and during your questing, you pick up on what it is, but it's really never mastered, and the desire to make them nuanced doesn't ever seem to hit. For example, later in the game, you're controlling both of them at the same time, and no matter what you do at one time, all your choices are basically taken from you, and you just have asshole answer and giant asshole answer as your choices, despite actually never whatsoever heading towards those choices at any time prior. It doesn't work, and it does not feel nuanced. And that brings us to fun factor. You can play with the gamepad or the keyboard and mouse when you're playing this game, but if you play with the gamepad, for whatever reasons, when you're choosing drinks, the gamepad will just not work, requiring you to actually grab the mouse to use it and pick from that way. Also, the map, when you're fast traveling around, the exact same thing occurs. Now, I'm hoping that that's fixed with a day one patch. That doesn't affect this particular review because I'm sure it will be, but it was something that did impact me as I was playing this. Now, I get it. Every game is different for every person, and the writing's going to be subjective for a lot. But for me, this landed with a pretty dull thud. I did enjoy some parts of it, and luckily it is a budget price, and on Gamepass is basically free. But I didn't really love my time with Afterparty. It's not terrible. It was just difficult when it came to getting started. The story is sort of boring to me, and while some of the characters are great, as is their voice actors, the writing really betrayed them time and time again. It just never got going. And when you add in the sort of wonky traversal system and lack of any kinds of exploration or interaction other than the exact two spots that usually exist in any place anyway, it becomes rote, and it did not feel as nuanced as, say, Oxenfree did. So as you guys know, I rate games on a buy, wait for sale, rent, or never touch it again rating system, with rent replaced by deep sale on PC titles, if that's the review I give it. And I think that's a perfect rating for this. If you have the PC or Xbox, get it on Game Pass. If you have it on the PS4, a deep sale is probably going to be best. I just don't feel $19.99 is even close to what we really get here. A lot of money was spent on the voice actors, but I really wish a lot of it would have been spent on the writing and the gameplay itself instead of that. Additionally, anybody who plays this for longer than 30 to maybe 45 minutes is probably going to guess the entire twist at the ending. It is one of the problems that comes with writing. When you're writing around something and you don't want to mention a particular thing, anybody who pays any attention can figure out the one thing that's not mentioned and know what's actually occurring, and that's what we have here. For other people, I could see them jumping into this and actually liking elements of it. And it's not a bad game. It's not broken. There's nothing like that. It's just one of those ones where it didn't really hit for me. So anyway, that's it for me. I hope you guys liked the video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down. Check out my Reddit and Twitter and Facebook. Of course, I'm on Anchor. You can see the international podcasts on Anchor or listen to them on Anchor every single Friday when I upload them. You can also watch us on ACG on Twitch at 10:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time on Twitch if you want to see those podcasts where we talk about titles. And you can become a patron on the Patreon website, which helps me continue to give you guys reviews that aren't 2 minutes long or filled with sponsored bullcrap. Peace out and enjoy the rest of your week.